Welcome back to the program. Of course, Daybreak continues this particular morning as we get into a special coverage of that announcement I told you about. The Ministry of Education this particular morning is set to make public the results of the 2023 Kenya Certificate of Primary Education exams, and pictures you can see on your screens right now are coming to us live from the NEC, the Kenya National Examination Council's Mtihani House in South Sea, right here in Nairobi. This is the venue where the Education CS, Ezekiel Machogu, is going to be addressing the nation in just a few minutes or moments from now, to be able to officially release the 2023 KCPE examinations results. Of course, we are having our team on the ground there. We will be getting more updates on what is happening and the expectations. Stakeholders from the education sector, senior officials from the Ministry of Education are gathered at NEC headquarters right here in Nairobi, expecting that big announcement by the CS. A big deal for the country, considering the fact that this is actually the final Kenya Certificate of Primary Education exam results. We are in the season of phasing out the 844 system and getting into the competency-based curriculum that has been rolled out in the country for quite some time. We've had learners go through the different grades, and the standard 8 pupils of primary who sat for the KCPE examinations this year are the last cohort in the primary education system to be able to sit through such an exam. And it is now going to transition into an assessment. And of course, we know that there were candidates who also sat for their KCPE assessment, I would say that, this particular year, and they are going also to be receiving their results as the KCPE candidates also receive their results today. And of course, we know that in this year, over 1.4 million candidates took the KCPE examinations. We had others, 1.2 million, who sat for their KCPE examinations in grade 6. And this was a total of about 2.6 million candidates in the lower cadre of the education sector. It happened at around the same time that the education sector also saw quite a number of candidates sit for their Kenya Certificate of Secondary Education examinations, which are still ongoing. And of course, results for that is also expected later in this year. But the Education CS, Ezekiel Machogu, has confirmed that the marking of this examination was already complete. When he spoke about the update on the results just recently, a few days ago, he said that these results ought to be made public before the end of this week. And yesterday, the ministry confirmed that they are going to be releasing those results today. Of course, it usually starts by a briefing at State House, where the head of state, President William Ruto, is going to be briefed on what these results look like. And of course, after that meeting between the Education CS and the head of state, he's going to be heading straight to the headquarters of NEC to be able to just also enable the country to know what that particular results look like for the 1.4 million candidates who sat for their KCPE examinations. This coming a bit early in what, according to the CS, is a move to give parents enough time to prepare well, because what will follow is that the Education Ministry is going to begin the process of conducting the Form 1 placement. And this should happen before Christmas. And learners who are expected to join Form 1, at least in the 3rd week of January, will be able to know the various schools where they're going to be undertaking their secondary school examinations. So for this result to come, just before Christmas, weeks before Christmas, will give parents enough time to be able to know where the learners will go and how to prepare for that particular transition The last cohort, I remind you, of the KCPE examination candidates are expecting to receive their results today. Once again, just to run you through a confirmation by the Ministry of Education that this is going to be happening. We already have stakeholders at the education NEC headquarters at Mitihani House in Nairobi who are waiting for the Education Cabinet Secretary Ezekiel Machogu to make public these results. That the Ministry of Education said that in the manner in which they conducted this examination process compared to the previous years, they learned lessons and they tried to implement quite a number of measures to be able to address the challenges that they have experienced in the previous examination processes. There was an escalated level of security. We also had, containers and exam centers increased, and we also had exams delivered twice a day. Some of the measures that the Ministry of Education put in place to be able to ensure that they did this process in a better way and also, managed the cases of exam malpractices, albeit with a few hitches here and there, which we will be discussing in the course of this coverage. But right now, I want to go to our very own Seth Olale, who was bright and early pitching camp at the headquarters, NEC headquarters in Nairobi, following up this big announcement that the country is expecting. A very good morning, Seth. Good to see you. Kindly just bring us up to speed with what you have gathered so far, the mood there and the expectations from those who are attending this very important event. What do you have for us, Seth?
Well, good morning, Safin. You're joining us, like you said, from the NEC headquarters here in South Sea. We are just waiting any moment from now for the Cabinet Secretary to make his way on this particular podium that has been set up. And all guests have arrived. They are seated, just waiting for that big moment. What we know is that the CS is already at this particular premise, this being a very memorable event, like you said, Safin, because we are bidding the very last, cohort of the KCPE examiners goodbye through this particular historic announcement of the results, touching and deciding the fate of the 1.4 million candidates who sat for this particular paper. So, like you said, the mood, actually, people are excited. People are just waiting to, for that particular moment when the CS will appear, of course, joined by top NEC officials, and also we're expecting the principal secretary in the basic education, PS, Bello Kipsang, to accompany the CS on this particular podium. The program was actually announced that it will start at 8 a.m. There seems to be a delay. It is now 9 a.m. And what the organizers here are telling us is that any moment from now, we expect the Cabinet Secretary, that is Ezekiel Machogu, to make his way here and announce those particular results. What we expect from the CE's speech also is just to tell us how this particular exam was moderated, what some of the challenges the examiners faced, and of course we know that this was a very closely monitored exercise. It was a joint effort by the ministries of ICT, Education and Interior, which had to provide the necessary logistics to make this particular KCPE of the 2023 class a success. There were challenges in regards to logistics. I know, and everyone knows that, several counties, and especially those ones in North Kenya, Marsabit, Turkana, Isiolo, and the likes of Mandera County, at some point there was, heavy downpour, and the organizers there had to use alternative means of transport just to ensure that each and every candidate of the 1.4 million got to sit for these particular papers. We also know that there were questions in regards to integrity, but this particular examination has been given a very high score rate by the CS Education, because they said that they only managed to identify 6 cases of attempted cheating, not even cheating, but he said attempted cheating, and that this is commendable for all those who undertook this particular preparation and in fact the execution itself by the relevant authorities, because he stated that this is, this shows improvement of, integrity when it comes to national examinations as compared to the previous exams. Like I told you, Safin, we are expecting the CS to make his way here at the podium any moment from now. What we know is that the CS arrived at this particular premise a few minutes after 8 a.m. What is ongoing right now, he's being briefed, and he's also briefing some of his juniors on what he was able to share with the president. Remember that as per the tradition, before these particular exams are actually announced on national television or during such an event, the president, the head of state, must be briefed. And so that particular session, we are told by reliable sources, took place yesterday evening, 6 p.m. at State House, Nairobi, giving the green light for this particular event to happen today. And in fact, it is after that particular briefing yesterday when now the notification was sent to media houses that this particular announcement will be made today. It is also very historic, Safin, because according to stakeholders in the education ministry, they say that, in terms of time lapses from the last exam paper that was sat on 1st November to today, being the 23rd, that this is actually one of the shortest duration ever marked in terms of when the last paper is being sat and now when the exam is being announced. It is actually the shortest duration. So it is historic, Safin, 38 years of the KCPE exam, and those who actually sat for the very first, the inaugural paper in 1985. It is very significant for them, and we will be also just finding some of their experiences in regards to how effective the KCPE exam was, and how what impact it had on them even going forward. What we also know, Safin, is that even as I wind up this particular link, because we know that any moment from now, I will be told that the CS is coming, that according to last year's results, we know the highest scorers were 431 out of 500 marks. We don't know yet the outcome of these particular exams this year, but for the 1.4 candidates who sat for this particular paper, we can only wish them well, and we only hope that it will be an improvement, if not a sustainability of the previous exams and papers. And so right now, I just have to hand you back to you, Safin Achieng, who's an expert in this field, to take it forward, because any moment from now, like I said, we have the CS, the PS Basic Education, Bello Kipsang, coming here, and of course the CEO for NEC just coming here to announce this particular result. Safin, do you know of any candidates, could be your niece, your nephew, even your brother, your siblings who sat for this exam? Because I have a niece who, of course, I wish her well, and any of the 1.4 million candidates, I wish them well. Safin,
all right, thank you so much. A lot indeed. I do have a lot of people that I celebrate, and thank you. And we also wish well your niece, Seth Olale. They are reporting to us from the NEC headquarters right here in Nairobi. We really appreciate you for that very comprehensive, update for what is expected to happen at that particular venue. As to whether I'm an expert, that is neither here nor there, but thank you, Seth. We really appreciate you for that. Just sat there painting a picture of how the morning is already looking like. Quite an array of activities for the officials from the education ministries, telling us that it began yesterday in a brief by President William Ruto. And of course, the CS, Ezekiel Mashogu, yesterday having that particular meeting to just brief, the head of state on the results and how they look like this particular year. And of course, after that meeting yesterday at State House, the CS is expected to make his way any minute from now to the NEC headquarters at South Sea right here in Nairobi, already the event is picking up. We've seen there officials in the education ministry, stakeholders from different sectors, head teachers, and of course those who are senior in this particular process, just having already settled, waiting for the CS to make his way to that particular venue. And one of the things that Seth mentioned there is that this is actually a very historic moment for those who have been sitting these exams for over 38, almost 38 years, and also those who have actually sat for those exams in this year. They are going to go down history as the last cohort, and it will be quite a significant moment as we look at the lessons learned under the 844 system and face it out and get into the competency-based curriculum. Of course, we expect a lot that the CS is going to be speaking about with regards to the performance, and talking to us there earlier, saying that the highest, candidate last year managed to get 431 marks. So we want to begin this very important conversation just to dissect this whole process. And I want us to, speak to Samuel Otieno. He's joining us virtually. Samuel Otieno is the Director of Advocacy and Partnerships at Zizi Afrique Foundation, a foundation that actually just focuses on improving the lives of children and looking at learning outcomes. And thank you so much, Otieno, for creating time for us this morning. Just a lot that we're expecting to happen this particular morning. I just want to begin this conversation by weighing in on your expectations, coming from a point of view of somebody who's very passionate about the welfare of children when it comes to matters education. What do you expect, Otieno?
Thank you very much, Safin, for having me. I first want to begin really by, congratulating the 1.4 million candidates who sat the KCPE examinations this year, and of course wish them well in the next stages of their education, because as you recognize, for the last 38 years, KCPE marks a very important milestone in the learning journey of people, and there are many Kenyans, including myself, who have gone through this particular process. I work at Zizi Afrique Foundation, and we are very much interested on issues to do with foundational learning and foundational, numeracy and literacy. And particularly our concern is always that even as we have these national level examinations, our concern and our, mission and vision is always that we hope that the candidates who sat the examination have got the requisite, have been able to, develop the requisite competencies for this particular level. And this being a very special KCPE, for example, because it's the last KCPE after 38 years, like Seth very well, elaborated. I think one of the most fundamental things is that the candidates for this year do not have many options in terms of, in the past there have been cases of people repeating, the standard 8 level, but for this year, they don't seem to have that option. And so for us, my expectation is that the candidates who sat the examination this year will definitely be able to all transition to the next level, because transition, again, is one of those things that we are very keen about, so that we ensure that there is progression in terms of the acquisition of the right competencies, but also in our education system. Of course, we know we are moving from our old system into the CBC, but we hope that this being the final cohort of KCPE, it is our desire and it is my expectation that the government has laid ground to ensure 100% transition to secondary school, but also just to look at it and see what the fact that there are only 6 cases, suspected cases of cheating, how this then impacts the achievement of learners, and hoping to see the learners that emerged, of course, strongly, but also what the government has put in place to ensure 100% transition, because one of the barriers of 100% transition has always been the costs associated with schooling. And as you'll be aware, there are economic challenges at the moment, and I'll be expecting very highly that the CS for education will be able to give some policy directions that will be able to support access and transition to secondary education. Thank you, Safin.
Just said, talking about the transition and hoping that it would be 100%. Of course, government has been trying to ensure that every learner, regardless of what they score in the national examinations, get a chance to transition to secondary school. But there has been quite a number of challenges that the country has experienced, because that 100% transition has remained a dream, but the government has been doing like a lot. And we'll be talking about some of the things that have actually acted like bottlenecks to that particular transition process by the government. But I just want to understand from you, Otieno, as we get from the 844 system and we now, like get into the CBC, system. Of course, we have been implementing this for quite a number of years in our country. What do you think about this new opportunity that, this transition is presenting for us? How significant is this moment for us as a country to have this as the last cohort sitting for the KCPE examinations?
Thank you, Safin. I think it's a very important moment and a very historical moment for that matter for our country. And particularly, this being the last cohort, it signifies the total move towards, the CBC curriculum, which is more about, harnessing the potential and the competences of children within the school system. Safin, as a stakeholder in the education sector, one of the things that we have always been very much, against has been, for example, the issue of ranking children. Because again, you recognize that in this particular system, what you score at KCPE determines which school you go to at secondary level. And we also have, there is a lot of evidence to indicate that sometimes even the secondary school you go to automatically determines, how you perform and the careers that you take. But the reason I think this is very significant is that it is clearing, the last system from the primary school level, but also now hopefully provides an opportunity for us to holistically focus on the implementation of CBC. And CBC, the way it has been designed, of course, there have been challenges around the implementation, but the way it was designed, it was basically designed in such a way that it provides an opportunity for every child to be able to excel in what they're good at. So rather than what we used to call the content-based, curriculum, where you need, you have to learn, be in school, learn, and then during the national examinations, be able to maybe express or replicate what you've learned. So the idea under CBC is that we have important things that are coming in and which, as an organization, we are very passionate about. Issues of values and life skills, for example, so that you're not just teaching children to be literate and numerate, but you're also making sure that as they go through the system, they are acquiring some competencies and abilities that will be able to help them not just to live in the modern world, but also to thrive. And CBC actually is designed to provide these pathways. And hopefully we know now the CBC is at the, is at the junior school level, what now we are calling the junior school. But at the senior school level, we expect that the government would have laid the foundation to ensure that there'll be very clear pathways on if this is a science-oriented student, what we call STEM, so science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, or if this, child or student is a humanities student, or if this is a student who is going to go to the talent, side of things, because you will be aware that there are people who might not necessarily have excelled in school, but they're very good because of the talents they have. Either they are footballer, an athlete, or something else. And so for us, it's a momentous time as a nation. And my hope and desire is that these last cohorts and the results that we are about to listen to from the CS would rally the country towards reimagining what our education system should be able to provide to our children, and in particular in view of the 21st century and beyond.
All right.
In particularly looking at how we become competitive, as global citizens.
All right. Otieno, you've talked about, what learning should be able to do for our children. And I'll speak to you as somebody who leads a network of over 80 organizations that are working to just improve the learning outcomes in the entire region of East Africa. The Kenya country lead for the Regional Education and Learning Initiative, really. If you look at the 38 years that we have been under the 844 system and looking at us now, fully going into this competency-based curriculum, what would you say are some of the lessons that we have learned that would help us, build better when it comes to achieving the better outcomes in learning for our learners? What is it that we go with?
Thank you, Sabine. So, I know my friends watching this and those who are particularly my age mates would kill me when I say that I'm very happy for the transition that we are having to CBC, because I'm also one of those people who went through the KCPE. But I think as a nation we've been able to come from very far. If you recall, the whole idea around the 844 system was education for self-reliance, and it was envisaged that anybody who had gone through the system would be able to have some requisite skills. But a lot of the time, those were technical skills to be able to either have a trade or to have a skill that would help them earn an income. And of course, down the line at some level when there was a decision that some subjects like home science, maybe, art and craft, music, were not going to be examinable, then a lot of interest was lost in these subjects. Yet, in my view, they're very, important in terms of building a society that we have. And so what CBC has done, in my view, is to more strongly and more explicitly, present these different skill sets and technical abilities as part of those things that we need in our society. And I know there's a lot of research that's happened around the conceptualization of CBC. But for me, what is really important is that the lessons we've learned over the last 38 years is that we cannot continue to just deliver an education that helps people to be able to read and write. But education has to have meaning. Education has to help people to perceive and to, and to understand the environment, to understand their country, to be able to visualize and conceptualize and interpret everything that is happening around them. And that is why, the issue of values and life skills and the key competencies that the basic education curriculum framework, for example, lists down issues like communication, collaboration, and teamwork, problem solving, become very essential in the life that we live in today, because you definitely will agree that life is becoming more, the world that we are living in is becoming more complex, and therefore we need problem solvers. We need people who can communicate effectively with others. We need people who are, good citizens. But we also need people who are able to solve problems. And I don't think the 844 system, as it's currently constituted, was able to deliver that. But there is also a fundamental issue around even how education is delivered. So we've had an education system where the teacher is expected to be the holder of all the knowledge and information. But what CBC is trying in many ways to bring in is to create an environment where teachers are facilitators of learning. And so coming up with teaching methods and pedagogies that enable the students, or the pupil for that matter, to play an active role in their learning process.
All right.
And to be able to, able to lead the process and to discover together, and the teacher's role now remains a facilitative one.
Okay.
So a really good change in my view.
Okay, Otieno, transitioning from just teachers being the ones who have the knowledge to being facilitators of that particular knowledge being cascaded down to the learners. I love that. And I just also want us to look at another comparison. The KCPE vis-a-vis the KCPE assessment. Moving from that word examination to assessment also, talk to us about the contrast and why, why assessment vis-a-vis examination as an expert in matters education. Because some of the things you're talking about, many would argue, cannot really be measured. What we are used to as a country is that examination process, cutting a line of those who've gotten these grades and those who've gotten these grades. These ones should go to these schools, these ones should go to these schools. But now we are getting into sort of a qualitative way of judging how much a learner knows and understands and can do. How will that look like, just to compare the two strategies?
Thank you very much. That is a very important question, and I'm sure most parents across the country, particularly those whose children are within the new CBC system, I'm privileged to be one of the parents whose children are the first cohorts of the CBC system. And I know the transition has not been very easy because we've been used to what we call the high-stake examinations culture, where, the grades that children get, becomes the yardstick on how you measure education outcomes. But I think the whole transition from examinations to assessment is fundamentally important, because from our standpoint in the education sector, and people are civil society organizations that work in the education sector.
All right. Just to cut it short, Otieno, just allow me, we can see on our screens there, the Education CS Ezekiel Machogu has arrived at the NEC headquarters in Nairobi. You can see him there just greeting senior officials from the Education Ministry. We've seen there the Education PS, Belio Kipsang, receiving the CS at this particular event. And his arrival at the NEC headquarters is actually a sign that the event should be starting officially any minute from now. So we will be keeping tabs just to be able to also follow up this for you. But back to you, Otieno. You were giving us your line of thought in terms to this transition from examination to assessment.
Yeah, thank you. And so I think from our standpoint, the transition from national examinations to more of assessment is a very significant one, because assessments go beyond just testing what somebody knows or just testing what somebody can recall from the learning process. Assessments are about getting to really measure and to test the competencies that somebody has been able to acquire.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Otieno. Thank you, Otieno. Thank you so much. We are sorry we have to cut you short.